And in this video, we hear of a potential conflict between Darren Nichols and Pat Tate. Also, we take a deeper look into Pat Tate's party in Dagenham, which was held upon his release from prison.
It was a crime which pushed everything else off the front pages. 3 men, all known criminals, found shot dead in the Essex countryside. It was a cold-blooded, professional killing. The victims had many enemies, but which one wanted them executed?
And welcome back to a new video on the Essex Boys case. As always, if you are enjoying the content, please do give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the Essex Boys case, or simply true crime in general, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Whilst in prison, Pat Tate and Michael Steele devised a plan to get Tate's money back from Tony Tucker. When Michael Steele received that money, he started to pay Sarah Saunders on a weekly basis. He said, quote, Tate had 2 vehicles, a Porsche for which he sold for £6,000. Jackie and I were the arbiters, referees in the breakup of the relationship between Sarah and Tate. They basically did not speak. Tate's attitude to her was, she does my head in. Jackie was the go-between. Sarah came back to Oakland with her son once and she was crying. Sarah said Pat had rung up and said to her, quote, Mickey and Jackie aren't your friends. They are my friends and they are only putting up with you because I say so. He was telling blatant lies that we were saying things about Sarah. They were lies in order to annoy her. Michael Steele states, on a number of times Sarah told me Tony Tucker, who used to pay her once a week, had let it go 10 days. As there was nothing for her child and her to eat, I lent them £100 which I didn't expect to get back, but I did. Sarah Saunders was a very nice person and she thinks of me as a father. It's total rubbish to suggest that an affair was taking place between us. She's 24 and I'm 55 years of age. I'm a father to her. I met Sarah Saunders' new male friend in a different part of Essex well before Pat was released. Then he went on to talk about seeing Pat Tate at 49 Gordon Road. Michael Steele said, after Pat's release, I saw him on Saturday afternoon at his home at 49 Gordon Road. Sarah Saunders had asked Jackie if she'd be there, so we both attended. I took £1,000 of Tate's money in case he wanted some pocket money, but he didn't want it. I took a balance sheet, which I kept. I went with Tate to Tony Tucker's address in Fobbing, his new place. Later in the evening, I went to an organised party to the Checkers in Dagenham. Tony Tucker turned up with Mad Mick Bowman and other fellows. They were snorting coke. Afterwards, we went out to dinner as planned. Michael Steele and Pat Tate had contact on Saturday the 4th of November and arranged to meet the following day, Sunday, at the services at Chelmsford near the auctions. Tate was alone and Steele handed over £19,000 to him. Steele said, quote, it was my idea because he had taken over paying Sarah Saunders and the money was a liability because I couldn't put it into the bank and I had no security system at home. I was half an hour with him. That is the 5th of November, firework night during the day. Steele saying he paid Pat Tate £19,000. Mr. Steele then went on to tell you something in his evidence which concerned Nichols. He said Tate had seen Nichols on Friday the 3rd of November and Nichols had called at Tate's home and offered him 50 kilos of cannabis at £1,100 per kilo, making a total price of £55,000. Okay, so let's just cut in here briefly because this is where we hit a fork in the road. We have Darren Nichols claiming that Michael Steele is the big drug kingpin. He's the person bringing in his boat with cannabis and other drugs. Yet Michael Steele starts to tell a very different story. He claims he is in fact working for Darren Nichols, that Darren Nichols is in fact the Mr. Big in all of these drug importations. What I'm going to do for you now is read a few paragraphs from the book Blogs 19, which looks at this event but from a different angle. The day of the party started off in the highest of spirits. One of the many pictures taken shows Pat Tate, Mick Steele and Jackie Street all together. Tate has an enormous smile on his face and looks relaxed in an open-necked denim shirt. Steele is standing with his hand on his hip and is also grinning broadly. Between the two huge men, looking like a little ragdoll, is Jackie Street, kicking out one of her legs like a tiller girl. Soon after the picture was taken, Steele took Tate to one side to discuss business. Steele explained that he was planning another drugs run in a couple of weeks' time and wanted to offer Tate the chance to buy into it. Tate asked how much Steele would charge for importing and then balked at the £330 per kilo price, saying it was way too much. It would leave him with little profit from selling the drugs over here. Steele calmly explained that with his way of smuggling there was virtually no risk. The chances of a customs boat patrol coming across his little rib on the way back from Blankenberg was less than zero. He should know he'd done it 1,000 times before. Sure, it might seem cheaper to pay some bozo a pile of cash to put it in his boot and drive it through customs, but with the sniffer dogs, x-rays and the like, there was at least a 1 in 10 chance of getting pulled. It would be a false economy. Eventually, the pair agreed on a price of £300 per kilo, and Tate promised to get some money to Steele in the next few days. What Tate had failed to let on, however, was that he didn't actually have any money. However, having just got out of prison, he needed most of what he had stashed away to buy himself a car, pay a few bills, and support the flashy lifestyle he was now living. Tucker had given him control of a couple of clubs, but the profits from those would take time to arrive. The sensible thing to do would be to pull out of the deal and wait. But Tate wasn't about to start being sensible. In fact, since getting out of prison, he'd been getting increasingly out of control and paranoid. He began to fear that he was being left behind by Tucker and Rolfe. Okay, now, in my opinion, it's fairly obvious that Michael Steele was in fact a drugs importer. He was the brains behind the outfit, he had previous form for importing drugs, and he continued doing so once he was released from prison. But what I want you to ask yourselves at home is that just because these two individuals in Michael Steele and Jack Wombs have denied being drug importers, does that naturally mean that they are capable of triple murder? Just because they have been deceitful in this instance, does this also mean that they are also lying about the triple murders? Now, moving back to the judges summing up in court, I think it's quite telling where Michael Steele states the following. Mr. Steele then went on to tell you something in his evidence which concerned Nichols. He said Tate had seen Nichols on Friday the 3rd of November when Nichols had called at Tate's home and offered him 50 kilos of cannabis at £1,100 a kilo, making a total price of £55,000. Now, what I've picked up on there is that Michael Steele is claiming that Nichols attends Tate's home. Now, the first thing that flashes into my mind when I read that is that Michael Steele isn't claiming that Darren Nichols called Pat Tate. He didn't make some sort of phone call which could be checked. They could look at the phone records. Did Nichols call him on the 3rd of November? Was there a call placed between these two individuals? What Steele is saying there is that Nichols called at Tate's home, and really there's actually no way of verifying that. Steele said Tate had asked him who Nichols' supplier was, because Tate wanted to bypass the supplier to get the cannabis cheaper. Quote, I said I knew full well who Nichols' supplier was. It was himself. End quote. Steele said he thought he had contact with Nichols the following day by phone call on Monday the 6th of November. He had contact with Tate, but it might have been Steele to Tucker. At that time there was a plumbing problem with the central heating at Tucker's property. Steele said that Tate had told him that he purchased what Nichols was offering. But now he realised that what he had been offered was not the quality he had been expecting. Tate wanted Nichols' phone number. Steele said he had it but did not give it to Tate because he said he would contact Nichols and explain the situation. Tate wanted Steele to see Nichols. Okay, just to clear up what is being spoken about in these paragraphs. Basically, Michael Steele is saying that Pat Tate purchased the dud cannabis not from himself, but from Darren Nichols. It's at this point that Tate realises that the cannabis is of very poor quality. He wants Nichols' telephone number to probably issue threats or demand his money back. And Michael Steele says, look, I've got Nichols' number, but let me go and meet up with him. Let me try and smooth the situation over. Let me go and explain things to Nichols, and I'll sort it out my end. You could class this, I guess, as a clever ploy here by Michael Steele, because there's not going to be any telephone records of Tate calling Darren Nichols. And the more I look into this, and the more I try and see this from Michael Steele's perspective, it's really, I guess you could say, quite an intelligent move. Or you could say, really, it's the only option that Michael Steele had, because, as I say, the police are going to check the phone records. They're going to see that there's no phone contact between Tate and Nichols. So how is Michael Steele going to explain his story? Well, what better way to explain it than to say, basically, that you were the go-between. You were the man in the middle. You were the person relaying the messages between Pat Tate and Darren Nichols. That way, it sort of negates any real need for phone contact between Tate and Nichols, because you are the person who's receiving messages from both individuals. You're receiving messages from Pat Tate, you're then passing that on to Darren Nichols, and vice versa. Pat Tate wanted Steele to go and see Nichols. Michael Steele obviously phoned Nichols, but he did not remember where he was when he made the call. There was an arrangement for a meeting. I was talking to Nichols so as to chaperone him to a turn-off off the A12. Quote, it was the Wickford Southend Road turn-off on the A130. It was the afternoon. I was late, but Nichols was there. He was very worried. He realised the stuff he had sold to Tate was not what Tate thought it would be. Nichols said he had to reimburse Tate, but he wanted me to explain to Tate and would not go himself because he was very worried. I told Nichols he would be better off facing Tate, but he wouldn't have it. Michael Steele states, there was a telephone kiosk on the A130 further down the road. It is a Hanningfield number. I took the telephone kiosk number and we sat outside in his car. I was late for the appointment with Tate. I had said to Nichols if Tate was not there I would give him a ring. I was meeting Tate at the Carpenter's Arms in Rayleigh. It is a pub that I know. Tate was not there, so I rang Nichols. I told him I would try to find Tate. The call has to be 268, the one at page 8 at 14:01. There you see there is a call from Steele to the payphone at the A130 East Hanningfield pub. Steele is telling you he took that telephone kiosk number and he was the person telephoning it to talk to Nichols. Okay, just going to cut in here quite quickly as this is very intriguing. The Carpenter's Arms. Where have we heard of this pub before? Well, this actually appears in a police statement by a man named Stuart Armstrong. This police statement was given on the 8th of the 3rd, 1996, and it states the following. Around the 10th of the 10th, 95, I started working as a barman at the Carpenter's Arms situated off the A130 at Rolfe. The pub itself I would describe as a locals pub with it being very cliquey. There is only the one bar area situated inside. There is not any video monitoring system inside the pub, basically because there is never any trouble. On either Tuesday the 5th of December 95 or Wednesday the 6th of December, I think it was more than probably the Wednesday, I was left to mind the pub on my own. Around 1600 hours I started work. It was not very busy during the afternoon and into the evening. However, around 2000 hours it was very quiet in the bar area, in fact quieter than normal when two men entered the bar. Both men approached the bar and I will describe them as best I can. One of them I shall refer to as Male 1. I would describe this man as white, 30 years old, around 5 foot 7 inches tall. He had a stocky build. He had brown hair that was cut very short and brushed straight down, but appeared to be receding. I believe he may have been wearing a green jacket, but I'm not certain. The other male I cannot describe in any detail, other than that he was also white and taller than Male 1. Male 1 asked me for a bottle of Budweiser beer and a bottle of Two Dogs alcoholic lemonade. What stuck in my mind was that it was company policy to pour any bottled drinks into a glass, and as I started to pour the Budweiser into the glass, Male 1 got agitated and wanted it kept in the bottle. I told him I couldn't and he accepted this, although he wasn't happy. Both then went over to a table situated in the corner of the bar area near the fruit machine. Around 20 minutes later, both men left. I didn't hear any conversation between them. I was glad when they left because I was on my own. It wasn't until the following week that I read the Evening Echo newspaper, and in particular an article on a triple murder that had happened in Rettendon. To my surprise, one of the three photos of the three deceased I immediately recognised to be male 1, whom had been drinking in the pub. The name of the person, according to the paper, was Craig Rolfe. Although I cannot describe male 2 in any detail, I can say that it was neither of the other 2 pictures in the newspaper of the 3 dead men. I would not be able to recognise male 2 again and have no other information regarding his description. Okay, so what we have here is an eyewitness account which takes place either the evening before the murders, being the 5th of December, or the evening of the murders, which was Wednesday the 6th of December. This takes place at around 8 p.m, bearing in mind that the prosecution put forward the case that Tucker, Tate and Rolfe were killed shortly before 7. But what I take most from this particular statement is the lack of description regarding male 2. The first thing that springs to mind is that this was a well-known local figure. I mean, could it be that this barman really can't give any detail at all? He doesn't even talk about an age. I mean, was he younger than Rolfe? Older than Rolfe? Was he white? Was he black? What colour was his hair? What colour were his clothes? I mean, literally, he can't provide the police with any detail whatsoever. Now, is that normal, or is that a little bit hard to believe? The other aspect, or the other angle I'm looking at here, is that if this eyewitness account actually transpired on the 5th of December, could this have been Michael Steele in the pub with Craig Rolfe? Now, I can't really come up with an idea of why they may be in a pub together, but it's incredibly interesting that Michael Steele was very well aware of this pub. He talks about meeting Pat Tate there on an occasion before these murders, and here we have an eyewitness account who seems fairly certain that they saw Craig Rolfe on either the 5th of December or the 6th of December in that pub. Anyway, let's continue on with the summing up in court. Michael Steele states, I went into the pub, the Carpenter's Arms, and was there a quarter of an hour, and I rang Tate on my mobile. Tate came back to the pub 15 to 20 minutes later. Tate explained the situation, that he had dragged the money up. He told Tucker and Rolfe there was a consignment for sale at 50 kilos at $1,400 a kilo, so it was £70,000. Rolfe, Tucker and Tate combined to put together £70,000 cash. That meant Tate had made $15,000, a difference from the $55,000. Steele said, quote, Tate takes coke and heroin but not cannabis. Tate was trying to get Nichols' address and proper phone number from me, but that meant Nichols would have been in trouble. I said to Tate, if you start hurting a man, you'll get no money back at all. All you'll end up with is someone who's rattled black and blue. Tate said he wanted to know the address anyway. I said, quote, there's no point because Nichols was not living there. That was half right and half wrong because often Darren Nichols would move out. If I had given the address, Tate would have gone over there. Nichols lived there with his wife and 2 little girls. Tate said Nichols had 7 days to come up with the money. I didn't know where Nichols could get it from. I got back to Nichols and told him the contents of the conversation about the 7 days and left it to Nichols to make his own arrangements. Right, now what I'm reading there, does this go to suggest that Tate potentially tried to rip Rolfe and Tucker off? Now, bearing in mind, we're just going by the word of Michael Steele here. So, I mean, take it with a pinch of salt, if you will. But what it states there is that Tate had to raise £55,000. But what he's told Rolfe and Tucker was that he needed £70,000. Let's just read this again. He told Tucker and Rolfe there was a consignment for sale at 50 kilos at $1,400 a kilo. Now that's not right, is it? Because originally the deal wasn't it 50 kilos for 1,100? So he's adding 300 on per kilo. So let's just read that again there. He told Tucker and Rolfe there was a consignment for sale at 50 kilos at $1,400 a kilo. So it was £70,000. Rolfe, Tucker and Tate combined to put together £70,000 cash. That meant Tate had made £15,000, a difference from the £55,000. Yes, I've just gone back and checked there, and it definitely was 50 kilos at £1,100 each. So Michael Steele is saying here that he's approached Rolfe and Tucker under the premise of it being $1,400 a kilo. So on face value, Tate has made £15,000 for doing nothing before the drugs have even got into the country. Now, does this explain why Tate was found with £7,000 in his wardrobe? Is that half of the money that was left over, potentially? Or did Tate rip off somebody else? Now, bearing in mind, as I said, we're going by the word of Michael Steele here, but there could be an element of truth in everything that is mentioned here. Could it have been that Tate did in fact rip someone off to the tune of 15k? He said that the price was higher than it actually was, and he pocketed that money. Was it Rolfe and Tucker who he ripped off? Certainly something we should look a little bit deeper into in future videos.